Paint over those stupid private signs. This is shared community infrastructure now.
Meredith Langford shouted it from the passenger window of a municipal orange truck as her hired crew dragged a pressure washer onto the timber deck of my father's bridge. One of them raised a spray gun and blasted a 42-year-old hand-painted plaque off the guardrail. The plaque had my daddy's initials on it, carved into the brass the same month he came home from Vietnam. It hit the creek below and sank in the brown water like a thrown horseshoe. My 14-year-old son Beckett was standing on the far bank holding his fishing rod, and he did not say a word. He just looked at me. Meredith did not apologize. She waved her clipboard and said,
Next, widen the road by 6 feet.
She thought the HOA was taking my bridge. She didn't know I was the county's licensed bridge inspector, and she didn't know what else her bulldozer was about to touch. What would you have done? Where are you watching from tonight? My name is Wade Ashcroft. I'm 48 years old. I live at the end of a mile-long private gravel road in Madison County, North Carolina. And for 23 years, I've inspected bridges for a living. Small ones, mostly. Backholler timber trusses, steel deck pony spans, one-lane farm crossings the state stopped paying attention to sometime around Reagan. If you drive the Blue Ridge long enough, you eventually drive over something I've signed my name to. My daddy built the one that matters most, himself, by hand, in 1979. A 92-foot steel truss span over Laurel Creek, timber deck, 18-ton rating, bronze commemorative plaque bolted to the west guardrail with his initials in it. Everett Ashcroft, Staff Sergeant, Army Corps of Engineers, home from Vietnam with one bad knee and a head full of quiet. He built it because the state had abandoned the Ford crossing during a bad spring flood, and a neighbor's wife almost drowned trying to get to a birthing hospital. He pulled the permit, he poured the footings, he welded the steel in the pasture with a tractor-driven generator. He deeded the bridge and the road around it into a separate private title and held it until the day he died. Then I held it. Then my son would hold it, if the world stayed kind. My boy is named Beckett. He's 14 this spring, skinny as a willow pole, better at math than I was at his age, a little hurt by his mother leaving 5 years ago, and a lot good at hiding it. We fish Laurel Creek from the bridge every Sunday afternoon. We have since he was 6. The HOA subdivision, Laurel Ridge Preserve, went up in 2011. 84 brick homes on an old apple orchard on the far side of Laurel Creek. The only way in or out without a 14-mile detour through 2 counties is over my daddy's bridge. For 14 years, that was a quiet, polite arrangement. I let them cross. They waved. Everybody understood. Then Meredith Langford and her husband Preston moved in from Charlotte, 18 months ago, and Meredith ran for HOA president unopposed because nobody else wanted the job. She wore a navy blazer to her own welcome luncheon. She spoke about modernizing the community's assets. She spoke about me, once, in a newsletter, as the mountain gentleman at the end of our access road. That was a warning I read too slowly. On a warm Friday in late March, I came home from a bridge inspection in Yancey County and found a freshly painted yellow HOA crest on the north face of my bridge abutment, 18 inches across, still tacky. I walked up the grade. I stood there a long time with my thumbs in my belt loops, staring at that cheerful, wet paint the color of a school bus. My phone buzzed. A notification from the Laurel Ridge Preserve community website. Meredith had posted a memo. Subject line, "A new era for our shared community bridge." The memo said 3 things. The HOA would be co-maintaining the road. A beautification committee would refresh the look of the bridge. And, my favorite, effective immediately. Access was reaffirmed as open community use. Beckett walked down from the house carrying 2 cans of cheerwine, saw me reading, saw my face, handed me a can, and sat down on the guardrail beside me. Dad? Yeah, Beck. That's not how this works, is it? No, son. What are we gonna do? I opened my cheerwine. I took a long, slow pull. I listened to the creek running under my feet. The same creek my daddy listened to when he bolted those trusses in place when I was Beckett's age. We're gonna be polite, I said, and then we're gonna be thorough. Being polite meant certified mail. A 3-page letter on Ashcroft Engineering letterhead, stamped with my PE seal, mailed that same Monday to Meredith Langford at her home address, and in care of the HOA management company in Asheville. Copy to their on-retainer attorney. Copy to my own attorney, Dean Caro. I kept the language flat. Paragraph 1. The bridge and the gravel road connecting it are owned in fee simple by Ashcroft, recorded in Madison County Deed Book 214, page 61. Paragraph 2. No easement, license, or public use grant exists in favor of Laurel Ridge Preserve HOA or its members. Historical informal use has always been at the owner's pleasure and is not a property right. Paragraph 3. The painting on the abutment constitutes criminal mischief and must be reversed within 10 business days, and any further action by the HOA against the bridge, the roadway, or the signage will be met with legal process, damages, and the posting of weight restrictions the HOA's vehicles will not enjoy. Dean Caro is 64 years old, built like a short oak, and practices law out of a converted feed store in Marshall. He read my letter, chuckled once, and called me. "Wade, how mad are you willing to get?" "As mad as the record requires me to be." "Good. She's going to escalate." Letter. By Wednesday night, Meredith had posted her reply, publicly, on the community site. 2 paragraphs of professional-looking nonsense claiming grandfathered public accommodation and implied dedication by decades of use. She misspelled accommodation. She also announced, right there in the same post, that the beautification committee would meet Saturday morning at the bridge to install welcome signage and refresh the handrails. I printed the post. I dated it. I slid it into the green hanging folder that now lived on the corner of my kitchen table. Saturday morning, I was up at 5:30 with coffee, a laminated stack of property records, and my dad's old binoculars hanging around my neck. Beckett was up with me, barefoot, quiet, the way he used to be on the mornings we'd go trout fishing. "You want me with you, Dad?" "I want you on the porch with the camera. Anything that happens on the bridge, you record it. Don't come down." "Yes, sir." At 6:50, a pickup and 2 SUVs rolled up the county-side approach of my bridge. 8 people in windbreakers with LRP crest embroidered on the left chest pocket climbed out carrying paint rollers, vinyl banner rolls, zip ties, and, the part that made my molars tighten, a pressure washer on a wheeled cart. Meredith was in the lead SUV. She stepped out in a cream raincoat, clipboard in hand, with the calm energy of a woman who had never been refused a parking spot in her life. "Good morning, Mr. Ashcroft," she called, bright as a game show host. "We're just freshening up the community bridge. This bridge is private property, Mrs. Langford. I've sent you written notice of that. Please remove your crew." "Oh, honey," she smiled. "My attorney says you're mistaken. Then we'll let the court resolve it. Until then, step back." She turned to her crew like I hadn't spoken and said, "Start on the west guardrail, please. Strip the old paint first." The man with the pressure washer lifted his trigger. I did not yell. I did not jump. I walked, calmly, to the east end of the bridge, unlocked a metal breaker box I'd installed 11 years ago, and flipped the switch that turned on the bridge's 30-ampere load monitoring camera system. 4 cameras, 1 on each corner of the bridge, all cloud-synced, all time-stamped, all rated legal evidence in North Carolina civil court. Meredith didn't see me do it. She didn't see Beckett either. 200 yards up on the porch, phone tripod mounted, already recording in 4K. The pressure washer hissed. A stripe of my daddy's paint, the very paint he'd mixed in a coffee can in the fall of 1979, came off the guardrail in long, peeling ribbons the color of dried mud. The bronze plaque with his initials followed a minute later, blasted loose, bouncing off the timber deck, and dropping over the edge into Laurel Creek with a soft, sad splash. I walked down to the creek bank. I waded in up to my knees. I found the plaque in the gravel, pulled it out, rinsed it, and carried it up to the house in both hands like it was a child. Beckett met me at the porch steps. His eyes were pink. He didn't say anything. He just took the plaque, wrapped it in his own clean t-shirt, and carried it to my office. I opened my laptop. I started a damages file. I numbered it Case 1. I filed the criminal mischief report with Madison County Sheriff's Office Monday morning. The deputy who took my statement was Sheriff Burke's nephew, Holt, a quiet young man who said he'd run the camera footage up the chain himself. "Granddad used to fish off that bridge with your dad, Mr. Ashcroft. He'd want this done right." I thanked him. I spent the afternoon welding a replacement mounting bracket for my father's salvaged plaque and bolting it back into the guardrail with fresh stainless hardware. Beckett handed me each bolt in order, the way he used to hand me Legos when he was 5. Monday night I slept 4 hours. Tuesday morning, before dawn, I heard the sound I'd been dreading, a diesel engine, not a pickup, something heavier. I pulled on boots and came down the drive with a flashlight. At the county-side approach, 2 men in reflective vests were backing a yellow Caterpillar D6 bulldozer off a lowboy trailer. A smaller skid steer waited behind it. Beside them stood a man I didn't know in khakis and a hard hat, holding a rolled-up site plan. Meredith, coatless in the wet March chill, hugged herself and drank something steaming out of a travel mug. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I walked into the headlights with my palms up. Gentlemen, stop. This is private property. What are you doing? The site plan man squinted. Brush clearing and road widening, sir. Mrs. Langford contracted us. We're bonded. Work order says 6-foot expansion of the roadway, with retaining stone on the west approach. You cannot widen this road. You cannot cross this bridge with that dozer. The posted structural rating is 18 tons, and you are 32, dry, before fuel. If that machine rolls onto my bridge, you will damage a historic structure and expose your company to personal liability. The contractor's jaw set. He looked at Meredith. Meredith smiled. Mr. Ashcroft, our attorney's letter supersedes your claims. Please step aside, or we'll have you removed for interfering with a lawful community project. Ma'am, the contractor said carefully, with respect, if the structure can't take this load, I can't operate. My insurance will not cover it. It can take it, she said, lightly, as if she were telling him what temperature to set a thermostat. It has taken worse. My husband looked it up. Her husband, I thought, is a hedge fund analyst who has never poured a footing in his life. Before I could speak again, she snapped her fingers at the operator. Proceed. The contractor hesitated. Then he climbed in the cab. He cranked the D6. He eased it forward at walking speed, toward the west approach of my father's bridge. I watched the bridge the way an ICU nurse watches a monitor. The D6 rolled onto the timber deck. I felt the ground hum under my boots. I saw, clearly and distinctly, the east abutment sway, not rock, sway, the way a bad tooth does. A hairline crack opened in the concrete, just above the waterline, a black seam in the gray. Up on the superstructure, 2 timber deck beams, the original 1979 Southern Pine, audibly cracked, one after the other. It sounded like a gunshot and a sigh put together. The contractor felt it too. He stopped immediately. He reversed slowly, carefully, and got the dozer back on solid ground. He stepped down. He wiped his face with his hand. I'm not doing that again, he said to nobody. I'm not doing that again. Meredith opened her mouth. He cut her off. Ma'am, respectfully, my company is done here. I'll eat the mobilization fee. Don't call me. He loaded the D6 back onto the lowboy in silence. The skid steer followed. By 7:15 they were gone, leaving tire ruts and a damaged bridge in their wake. Beckett was at my elbow. I had not seen him come down. He was staring at the cracked abutment and at the chipped edge of a deck beam his grandfather had hand-planed. His chin was quivering. Dad, is it broken forever? It's hurt, Beck, not broken forever. We'll fix it, but somebody's going to pay for every splinter. I walked up the slope to Meredith, who was already retreating toward her SUV. Mrs. Langford, you have just structurally damaged a North Carolina bridge. You have done so with sworn knowledge of its private status. I want you to know that every second of what just happened is on camera. From 4 angles, cloud synced. She paused at her car door. She didn't look back. We'll see about that, Mr. Ashcroft. She left. I pulled out my phone. I called my old colleague Travis Renfro, another licensed bridge inspector, and asked him if he could come out that afternoon with his ultrasonic tester. He said he could be there by 2. Then I sat down on the guardrail, and for 1 minute, I let my hands shake. Travis Renfro pulled in at 1:45, with his pickup loaded like a surgical cart. Ultrasonic thickness gauge, penetrant crack detection kit, load calc tablet. He was 61, half deaf in his left ear from 30 years of concrete saws, and the best field inspector I'd ever worked with. He did not talk while he worked. He crawled under the bridge deck and waders. He tapped beams. He marked flaws with white paint. I watched him from the creek bank with Beckett. At 4:15, Travis came back up dripping creek water and wiping his face with a red shop rag. Wade. 2 deck beams fractured clean through the grain. Abutment has a tension crack 3/16 wide running up from the water line. 3rd beam has delamination consistent with point load exceedance. You've got 18, maybe 24 months before fatigue failure if nothing's done. If somebody runs another loaded dozer over it, hours. Cost to repair to original spec, $47,000 give or take. Timber replacement, abutment pinning, deck retorque, epoxy grout injection, and a fresh load test. Put it on letterhead, stamped, in my email tonight. Already drafting it in my head. I thanked him. Beckett shook his hand. That evening, I called Madison County Code Enforcement and asked to open a formal damage complaint. The officer was calm, professional, and scheduled a site visit for the following Tuesday. I hung up, hopeful. Monday afternoon, Tuesday's visit was canceled. The officer called apologizing. A hold had been placed on the site visit pending review by the county's Road Commission Appeals Board. The appeals board was chaired by Preston Langford, Meredith's husband. I stood at the kitchen sink for a full minute, staring at the faucet, a quiet knowledge nugget worth saving. In most states, appointed road commission positions are filled with part-time political appointees, whose conflicts of interest are supposed to be disclosed, but often aren't. A formal recusal request, in writing, with a copy to the State Ethics Commission, usually shakes the tree. I filed one that night. Copy to the North Carolina Board of Ethics. Copy to the State Attorney General's Office. Copy to Dean Caro. I also filed, for good measure, a public records request under Chapter 132 of the NC General Statutes for every email between Preston Langford and any county staff over the previous 6 months. 10 business days, by law. Meanwhile, Meredith was not idle. Wednesday evening, I ran into her at the Dempsey Brothers General Store, where I was buying replacement stainless carriage bolts. She was at the register with a bottle of Pinot Grigio and an HOA board member, Gail Monroe. When she saw me, she raised her voice deliberately. "Oh, Gail, there he is. The gentleman who thinks his little wooden bridge is going to stop an entire community." Gail had the decency to look embarrassed. "Mrs. Langford," I said. "Good evening." "Did you know," Meredith announced to the store at large, "that Mr. Ashcroft refused to allow emergency road improvements? He's endangering the children of Laurel Ridge." Henry Dempsey, who owned the store, and who had known my daddy for 50 years, set down the register drawer and stared at her the way a retired sergeant stares at a recruit who's forgotten to salute. "Ma'am," Henry said, "Wade Ashcroft is a bridge inspector. When he tells you a bridge can't take a bulldozer, he's not guessing. You might want to listen to him before you test him." Meredith turned pink. She left the store without her wine. Gail Monroe quietly mouthed an apology to me on her way out. Thursday morning, I received the next envelope. The HOA had filed a lien against my private road and bridge, claiming they constituted common area subject to assessment, and billing me, retroactively, for 18 years of unpaid shared road maintenance fees. The demanded total was $28,500, using my family name, on my own land, assessing me for upkeep of the bridge my father built by hand. I took the lien notice out to the porch. Beckett was sitting on the top step with a library book, Geoffrey of Monmouth. He looked up. "Is it bad, Dad?" I thought about it. A hawk was turning over the pasture, slow circles, catching air. The cracked abutment was visible from the porch, a pale scar along the concrete. "No, Beck," I said. "It's stupid. Stupid is always worse for them than it is for us." That night, after he went to bed, I opened my daddy's old filing cabinet, the one in the back room he'd labeled Bridge in black marker the winter before he died, and I began pulling out papers. By midnight, I had 3 piles on the kitchen table. Pile 1 was my father's original 1979 construction file, hand-drafted engineering sketches on vellum, his own neat block printing, a copy of the NC Department of Transportation private bridge permit he'd pulled that September. The permit had a clause I hadn't looked at in years, typed in 12-point courier. Bridge use to remain non-public, ownership in perpetuity. No dedication of public easement without owner's sworn written consent. Sworn written consent. He'd underlined it in blue ballpoint, twice, the year they built Laurel Ridge Preserve. Pile 2 was a certified copy of the 2011 HOA plat I'd pulled from the county GIS office that afternoon. The plat showed the bridge as a shared access improvement. It cited, as legal authority, a bridge easement agreement recorded, supposedly, against my property. I'd requested the signed easement from the recorder's office Wednesday morning. The easement arrived in my inbox Thursday at 11 p.m., and when I opened the PDF, I stopped breathing. The signature page was blank, not forged, not altered, blank. My father had been sent the agreement as a draft. I could see his handwritten note in the margin, in pencil. Consider, discuss with Wade. He had never signed it. He had died 3 months later. The developer, apparently, had filed the unsigned draft with the county anyway, presumably hoping nobody would check. Nobody had. For 14 years. It was a bridge easement of pure oxygen. It didn't exist. Pile 3 was the quietest. a manila folder of correspondence between my father and the North Carolina State Historic Preservation Office, dating from 1983. The office had expressed formal interest in nominating his bridge for the state's Historic Engineering Register. He had declined, politely, not out of ego, but out of privacy. "Don't want tourists slowing down my cattle," he'd written, "but keep the file open." The file was open. I confirmed it by phone the next morning. The bridge qualified under 3 criteria: post-war truss design, builder's documented war service, and 40-plus years of continuous single-owner stewardship. The SHPO officer on the phone said if I filed the emergency application, she could push it through in 10 business days. Historic designation would, among other things, trigger an automatic injunction against any unpermitted alteration, including, for example, paint stripping by pressure washer. A knowledge nugget worth pinning. Many states offer a fast-track historic designation for privately owned structures under sudden threat. The paperwork is not long. The protection is broad. If you own anything your grandfather or great-grandfather built, research it. At 2 in the morning, I closed the files and looked up, through the kitchen window, at the silhouette of my father's bridge against a waning moon. I was also, as of last November, the licensed bridge inspector of record for every small span bridge in Madison County, mine included, which meant, under North Carolina Administrative Code 19A Section 11, I had the legal authority to post a weight restriction on my own bridge, effective immediately, based on the documented fatigue damage of the bulldozer incident. A 2-ton limit would be defensible. A 2-ton limit would exclude every SUV in Laurel Ridge Preserve. I stood up. My knees popped. I went to bed. The next 9 days I worked the way my daddy had worked the year he built the bridge. Quietly, methodically, without raising my voice above the sound of my own coffee maker. Friday morning, I formed Ashcroft Bridge Holdings, LLC, with the North Carolina Secretary of State. By that afternoon, I had a certificate of formation, a federal EIN, and a business bank account opened at the local credit union. I registered a DBA, Ashcroft Historic Private Bridge Crossing, and paid for a commercial outdoor signage permit through the county. Saturday, I printed signs, big ones, 36 by 48, reflective white, with black legend. Posted per North Carolina General Statutes, Section 14-159.6, every 50 feet along the private road and on both approaches to the bridge. No trespassing, private property, bridge weight limit, 2 tons, commercial crossing available by written contract, $15 per axle, $25 minimum, payment due on demand. By entering with a vehicle or trailer without a written agreement, you accept these terms as a bailment contract under North Carolina common law. I also posted, on the guardrail where my daddy's plaque used to hang, a new notice. This bridge is under emergency structural restriction, pursuant to NCAC Title 19A, Chapter 11. I signed it Wade Ashcroft, P.E., Licensed Bridge Inspector, Madison County. By Saturday night, the ANPR cameras I had already installed after the plaque incident were feeding a plate capture database, time-stamped, billable. Every HOA homeowner who crossed my bridge from that Saturday forward was accruing a recorded fee. A takeaway I want to leave you with. If you have a legitimate private bridge or private road, posting properly worded commercial use signs at the entrance is not merely decoration. Under the common law of most states, those signs are contract offers. Drivers who cross have accepted. Monday, I submitted the Emergency Historic Designation application. I attached Travis Renfro's stamped damage report. I attached my father's military service record. I attached the 1979 permit with the underlined sworn consent clause. I attached photographs of the cracked abutment and the hand-forged brass plaque. The SHPO officer called me back within an hour to confirm receipt. Mr. Ashcroft, I expect this on the register within 7 business days. Tuesday, Dean Caro filed 4 things at the Madison County Courthouse in the same morning. A quiet title action against Laurel Ridge Preserve HOA. A declaratory judgment action asking the court to find the 2011 easement void for lack of signature. A damages suit for $47,000 in structural harm, plus the retroactive toll bill. A formal counter-demand rejecting the HOA's $28,500 lien and billing the HOA treasurer personally for filing a bad faith lien under NC General Statutes Section 44A-12.1, which carries treble damages. Wednesday, I met Henry Dempsey for coffee at his store and asked him if he'd sign a sworn affidavit about his decades of friendship with my father and what he knew about the private status of the bridge. Henry was 82, a retired master sergeant, and a man whose word had once settled a boundary fight without a lawyer. He signed on the spot. Thursday, I recorded a permanent preservation easement on the bridge and the road with the Southern Appalachian Land Trust. The easement forever barred any public dedication of the crossing without the owner's sworn written consent. From the moment of recording forward, no HOA, no developer, no county board could ever claim implied dedication against my family. Friday morning, I drove to the sheriff's office and spent an hour with Sheriff Burke. We went over the cloud-synced camera footage from the pressure washer incident and the bulldozer incident. Sheriff Burke, who had fished off my bridge as a boy, took 4 pages of notes. "Wade, when you're ready to put on the show, call me. I'll bring enough men." "I will. Sheriff, I'd appreciate if somebody also looked into who authorized the lien filing." "Already on the list." Saturday, 9 days. 9 days, and my daddy was standing right behind my shoulder. Meredith, to her credit, had animal cunning. She sensed the barometer changing before she could read the signs on the wall. Saturday afternoon, I got the first call from a neighbor, Shelby Greer, who lived 3 houses from Meredith and who had gone to high school with my cousin. Shelby was whispering, "Wade, she's telling everybody you closed the road illegally during school pickup. She says her daughter couldn't get home Friday. She's organizing a rally, I guess, Monday morning at the bridge." "Is there any truth to it?" "None. The weight limit signs are posted, but nobody's been blocked. Her daughter came home on the school bus with my son." "Thank you, Shelby. You're a good neighbor." "I'm a good human, Wade. I just didn't know it until now." Sunday, Meredith filed, in her own name and as HOA president, a criminal complaint against me for obstruction of a public accommodation and reckless endangerment of a school-child residential community. The complaint was forwarded, as a matter of procedure, to Sheriff Burke. Sheriff Burke called me, laughing grimly. "Wade, this is the thinnest thing I've read since my last divorce papers. I'm marking it closed as unfounded. But I'll do you a favor and not tell her I closed it yet." Monday morning, at 7, Meredith and 14 of her loyalists gathered at the east approach of the bridge holding handmade signs. "Our community, our road. End the bridge bully. Children deserve access." A local stringer from the Asheville Courier was there with a camera. Meredith stood on a folding chair and read a prepared statement about a dangerous recluse with a weapons license and a vendetta against women in leadership. I was not there. I was on a bridge inspection job in Yancey County, 44 miles away, exactly where my published work calendar said I'd be. Beckett was at school. The cameras were recording. Sheriff Burke's nephew, Deputy Holt, was parked out of sight in a patrol car with a radar gun. At 7:17, Meredith's folding chair slipped on the gravel, and she nearly fell into Laurel Creek. At 7:23, the stringer from the Courier asked Meredith on camera whether she'd obtained permission from the property owner to gather on the private road. She said, on tape, "He doesn't really own it, that's the whole point." The stringer, to his credit, filed his story that afternoon with exactly those words quoted. The headline was kinder than I expected. "Private bridge dispute decides Laurel Ridge community." The article was picked up on Facebook. The comments did the work for me. Monday afternoon, Preston Langford called my office. I did not answer. He left a voicemail. Dean Caro transcribed it later into a legal exhibit. In essence, "Mr. Ashcroft, I have known the chair of the North Carolina Board of Licensing for Engineers for 11 years. If you don't withdraw your court filings by Friday, I will personally ensure that your PE license is reviewed for, let's say, professional overreach. I think we can come to a reasonable understanding." A knowledge nugget, this one worth framing. In every state I know of, attempting to influence a professional licensing board to punish a specific individual is, in itself, actionable. Document the call, preserve the voicemail, forward it to your own professional board's ethics office yourself, before anyone else can. I did. Tuesday morning, the North Carolina Board of Ethics opened a formal inquiry into Preston Langford's alleged misuse of his county road commission seat. Wednesday morning, my PE board's general counsel called me personally to say the board had received my ethics complaint against Preston and that I should expect, quote, "no inquiry whatsoever against me, this month or any other." Wednesday afternoon, The North Carolina State Historic Preservation Office officially entered my father's bridge onto the state register. I read the confirmation email out loud to Beckett at the dinner table. He chewed his meatloaf thoughtfully. Granddaddy's bridge is famous now, Dad. Granddaddy's bridge always was, Beck. They just wrote it down. Thursday night at 11:47 p.m., my phone pinged with a motion alert from the West Approach camera. I sat up in bed. I watched the live feed on my phone screen in the dark. A cream Lexus SUV pulled onto the gravel approach, with its headlights off. Meredith stepped out in sneakers and a hoodie, the first time I had ever seen her without a blazer, carrying a can of black spray paint, and tucked under her other arm, a pair of heavy-duty cable cutters. She actually walked, onto my bridge. She pulled back her hood. She sprayed "Private is theft" across the timber deck in 3-foot letters. She walked to the east guardrail, and she cut the steel safety cable at the center post with the cutters. A slow, effortful squeeze that took her 4 separate tries. Then she egged my daddy's plaque. 3 eggs. They cracked against the brass and slid down in cold ropes. Then she walked back to her Lexus, got in, and drove away. The entire event ran 4 minutes and 11 seconds. The cameras caught every frame. Her face, her plates, her vehicle's VIN visible rear window sticker. I did not confront her that night. I saved the footage to 3 drives. I went back to sleep. Friday morning, I emailed the footage to Sheriff Burke, copy to Dean Caro, copy to the SHPO officer, because a historic register structure had just been intentionally vandalized, which is a separate felony in North Carolina under NCGS Section 14-127.1. I attached the timeline. I went to work. That afternoon, Beckett came home from school quieter than usual. He sat down in the kitchen. He set his phone on the counter. "Dad, I have to show you something." He played a 17-second video. Meredith's daughter, a sophomore named Blair, in the high school cafeteria, on speakerphone with her mother. Blair was saying, "Yeah, Mom, everybody's talking about how you're going to get the bridge condemned. Whatever. Yeah, okay. No, he's not a real engineer. He's just a redneck with a ruler." Meredith's voice, tinny but clear through the phone speaker. "Don't worry. By next month, he'll have learned his lesson. I've got somebody handling the mailbox tonight." Beckett paused the video. "Dad, she paid Jesse Hartwell to drive his truck into our mailbox last night. Jesse told me at lunch. He said she gave him $300. And you recorded him saying so?" "Yes, sir. I told him I wasn't mad. I asked if I could just record him so I'd have proof it was him and not somebody worse. He said okay." My son, 14 years old, had run a better interview than most investigators I'd worked with. Beckett, you did exactly right. You're not in trouble. You don't need to do anything else. I'm going to call the sheriff. You go eat a bowl of cereal. And you're not going back to school tomorrow. Tomorrow you're going to spend the day with me doing the final paperwork." He nodded. He ate his cereal. Then he went to his room and stayed there, quietly, the way he did when he was hurt, but refusing to admit it. Later that evening, Sheriff Burke arrived personally. He took Beckett's phone into evidence, duplicated the audio to his dashcam drive, handed the phone back within 20 minutes, and sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a notepad. "Wade, I've got her cold on 3 counts now. 2 felonies and a misdemeanor, not counting the bulldozer liability. I was going to wait till after your court filing to act. You want me to move now?" I thought about it, about Beckett's face at the counter, about my daddy's plaque with dried egg on it. "Not yet, Sheriff. Next Wednesday. At the HOA community meeting, in public, in uniform. Will you come?" Sheriff Burke smiled. He was 63, and his smile was the slow kind, the kind that said he knew how long the week was going to be. "Wade, I'll bring my dress coat." The Laurel Ridge Preserve Clubhouse was a glass-fronted building with a fake cedar beam ceiling and a projector Meredith had paid for out of her own pocket last summer as a gift to the community. The community meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. on a Wednesday. Meredith had circulated the agenda that morning. Item 1, emergency bridge matter. Item 2, adoption of community resolution against hostile neighbor. Item 3, light refreshments. She had advertised a live stream on the community Facebook group. 400 viewers logged in before the gavel fell. The clubhouse seated 96. It was full at 6:45. I walked in at 6:58. I was wearing a pressed charcoal suit I'd worn once, at my father's funeral, with his Distinguished Service Medal pinned above the breast pocket. Beckett beside me in his first tie. Behind us came Dean Caro in a Navy 3-piece. Behind Dean, Sheriff Burke in his dress coat with 4 deputies. Behind the deputies, County Engineer Ronnie Tatum carrying a sealed folder. Behind Ronnie, the North Carolina State Historic Preservation Office field representative, a woman named Loretta Mayfield, carrying a bronze plaque under her arm, wrapped in white cloth. Behind Loretta, Travis Renfro with his inspection file. Behind Travis, Henry Dempsey in a clean work shirt, hat held against his chest. And behind them all, the Asheville Courier journalist Kimberly Pace, with a small camera and a notebook. The chatter in the clubhouse fell off like somebody had turned down a radio dial. Meredith was at the head table in a cream blazer I now recognized as the closest thing she owned to armor. She half stood. She said too brightly, "Oh, Mr. Ashcroft, this is a private HOA meeting." Dean Caro, without raising his voice, handed her a certified copy of Laurel Ridge Preserve's own bylaws, with Section 4.2 highlighted, which required any action concerning access infrastructure to be open to the property owner whose interests were implicated. She sat back down slowly. I walked to the lectern. "Evening, neighbors. My name is Wade Ashcroft. Some of you have known me for most of your lives. Some of you moved in last year. Tonight, I'm going to share 5 documents with you. Then Sheriff Burke has a separate matter. Then we'll leave you to your refreshments." Click. The 1979 NCDOT private bridge permit. Sworn consent clause enlarged. My father's underline in blue ballpoint, highlighted now in yellow. Gasps from 2 older couples in the back. Click. The 2011 easement's blank signature page. Large red circle around the empty line where my father's name should have been. This was recorded against my property 14 years ago without a signature. The entire basis of any HOA claim to this bridge is a single, unsigned sheet of paper. Click. The North Carolina State Historic Register designation entered the previous Wednesday. Loretta Mayfield stepped forward, unwrapped the bronze plaque from its white cloth, and set it on the edge of the head table. Meredith's eyes flicked to it like a bird spotting a predator. Click. Travis Renfro's damage report. $47,000 in structural harm from the March bulldozer incident, plus ANPR-logged crossings of HOA-associated vehicles over 16 months, billed at posted commercial rates, totaling $38,250, plus the HOA's own false lien being counterclaimed under NCGS Section 44A-12.1 at treble damages of $85,500. Grand total currently owed by Laurel Ridge Preserve HOA, $170,750. Meredith made a sound, a small, dry, wounded sound. Click. The final slide. Night vision camera footage, labeled and time-stamped, of Meredith Langford in a hoodie, spray painting, "Private is theft," across the historic deck. The cable cutters in her gloved hand, the eggs arcing toward my father's plaque. Then Beckett's school cafeteria audio. Meredith's voice through her daughter's speakerphone. "I've got somebody handling the mailbox tonight." The room did not breathe. "And the last matter," I said. "Effective noon tomorrow, the bridge will be closed to all vehicle traffic for 6 weeks of historic compliant repair. The 14-mile detour through Spring Creek starts tonight for emergency vehicles and at noon tomorrow for everyone else." Meredith stood up. She opened her mouth. Sheriff Burke stepped around the head table, quietly, courteously. "Mrs. Langford, please place your hands on the table. You are under arrest for felony vandalism of a historic structure and felony solicitation of property damage. You have the right to remain silent." Preston Langford, in the front row, tried to stand. A deputy stepped into his path with a summons in his hand, served him on the spot. The summons announced the State Ethics Commission's formal inquiry into his conduct. Preston sat back down. Meredith was walked out in cuffs. The live stream's viewer count, Kimberly Pace later told me, spiked to 6,100 the moment she crossed the threshold. I folded my notes. I nodded to Beckett. I turned to the room. "Thank you for your time, neighbors. The coffee's on me." The HOA settled 3 weeks later. Not because they wanted to, because their general liability carrier, after reading the file, informed the board in plain written language that every further day of litigation would raise the policy deductible personally owed by each board member. The carrier wired me $170,750 on a Tuesday morning in April. Meredith Langford pleaded out to a reduced felony vandalism and 2 misdemeanor counts, surrendered her passport during proceedings, and agreed to community service repainting trail signs in a state park she had previously petitioned to rename. Preston Langford resigned his seat on the County Road Commission Appeals Board the same afternoon and accepted a negotiated settlement from the Ethics Commission that included a 10-year bar from any North Carolina public appointment. Their house, over-leveraged against his bad hedge fund quarter, went to foreclosure before the summer was out. They moved to the low country of South Carolina. They did not write a forwarding address. I did not spend the settlement on myself. I set aside Beckett's college fund. His mother would not have helped, and that fact no longer hurt me the way it used to. I paid Travis Renfro for his reports. I paid Dean Caro his fee. I paid to replace the mailbox. Then I took the rest to a meeting at the Dempsey Brothers General Store, where I laid out a plan with Henry Dempsey, Travis Renfro, and Loretta Mayfield of the SHPO. We created the Everett Ashcroft Memorial Bridge Preservation Fund. The fund does three things. It pays for emergency structural restoration of privately owned historic bridges in western North Carolina and East Tennessee. It endows a trade scholarship for rural high school students who want to apprentice into structural engineering, welding, or historic preservation without going into debt. And it operates a small mobile legal aid unit for landowners facing unlawful HOA or road commission overreach. Dean Caro drives the mobile clinic in a retrofitted 1994 Ford Econoline, 2 Saturdays a month. Jesse Hartwell, the teenager Meredith had paid $300 to take out my mailbox, was the fund's first scholarship recipient. He's at Mayland Community College, studying construction technology. He apologized to Beckett, in person, at our kitchen table. They played chess afterward. They've played chess every Thursday evening since. The bridge itself was restored over 6 weeks by a crew out of Boone, using local timber, epoxy injection on the abutment cracks, and original period stainless hardware. When the work was done, Beckett and I welded a new bronze plaque alongside my father's salvaged one. Beckett did the final pass on the weld bead himself. His hand was steady. The plaque reads, "Restored in 2026 by the third generation, preserved forever." On a clear Saturday in May, the community of Laurel Ridge Preserve, with a brand new HOA board that had voted Gail Monroe in as president unanimously, held a bridge rededication ceremony. They brought casseroles. They brought children. Henry Dempsey gave a short speech about my daddy that made me cry once, briefly, into my shirt sleeve. Shelby Greer organized the potluck. A 7-year-old in a pink helmet rode a bicycle across the deck first, at the request of the board, because I had recorded a new permanent public easement that afternoon, granting free pedestrian and bicycle passage, forever, for anyone who respected the 2-ton vehicle limit. My daddy built this bridge for a neighbor's wife in labor. It seemed fitting that the first crossing after restoration was a child learning the feel of a handlebar. If this story has a lesson, it is that quiet people who keep their records win the long game every time. If you have a bridge or a boundary or a barn your grandfather built, and some stranger in a navy blazer has begun calling it community infrastructure, go dig out your deed tonight. And if you've got an HOA story of your own worth telling, leave it in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe for the next story, where a developer tries to divert a creek through a widow's pumpkin field and finds out about groundwater rights the hard way. See you there.
What brought Meredith Langford down wasn't the pressure washer or the bulldozer or the midnight vandalism. Though was the moment that at her. It was her assumption that the fireman at the end of a gravel road wasn't keeping reports. She mistook weight calm for passivity. She mistook his breast khakis for lack of spine. She mistook a bridge built by hand in 1979 for common clay. Wade's real advantage wasn't his license or his camera. It was his inheritance. A man whose father has well still in a patrol at midnight taught him to mix chaos with a liquor. He didn't need to win loud. He needed to win clean, in court, on camera, and in front of the neighbors. His father has one half reached hospital in the middle of the storm. If you got a private road, a family bridge, or a battery somebody is trying to quietly redraw, take the weekend and dig out your disc. You'll be amazed what your grandfather already fought for. Drop your own HOA story in the comments. I read them all. Subscribe for next week, where a developer tried to divert a creek through a withered pumpkin field and run straight into Appalachian waterlord. See you there.